Hotep, greetings, your brother Beniti Amenre, back with another post. What we're going to talk about, or what we're going to discuss today, something which is very important, breaking the misconceptions on what spiritual black magic is, or magic, and creating your own path, which is the key in this. Because what can tend to happen in dealing with what we call the occult, and to take the spookism out of the word, that just means hidden, metaphysical principles, alchemy, and magic, just like anything else, unfortunately, can kind of become or turn into a religion. What I mean by turn into a religion, because if we use these higher sciences, which are beyond faith and belief, person, place, and thing, and we're going to go over some of the basic principles of just what magic is, or witchcraft, some people term it. It transcends beyond those faith belief systems. But what tends to happen is when one becomes systematic, like one can in religious schools of thought, they just start to strictly follow, things, whether it's certain dogmas, certain systems, or certain individuals. And like I've said before, on a multitude of levels, it, by all means, it doesn't mean you cannot study up under somebody, have guides, teachers, and elders, because we need those things to get us to a certain point. But what distinguishes a true individual that has raised themselves up to deityship, and what distinguishes a true individual, male or female, that is now on their own path, is that they've raised themselves up to a certain point where now they are creating their own path. They are using the information, the magical systems that they studied up under, as a guideline or a roadmap now, as a general idea, to create magical systems and paths that work for them. So what we have to get people in the mindset, if you're a spiritual practitioner and a black magician, we have to get people in the mindset is when you're on that correct path, you are now creating your own rituals based on the information that you've studied under. You are not just carrying out word verbatim, letter by letter things that you were taught. And most people get stuck in this mindset: if I'm not following it as it was written in a book somewhere, or as it was taught to me, then I'm violating some type of law, or I'm violating some type of principle. Now, problem that comes in with that is we're programmed to think if somebody is doing something that we haven't read or we can't identify in a book, in a book somewhere, or something that we were taught, or something that was spoken to us, we automatically think that it's not, has no legitimacy. Well, let's think about this. All the information, all the people that have been here in the past, all the elders that have left information, at one point that information was new. So at what point does that information become validated? It's the same thing in this day and time. If you create your own magical system and your own path, of course you're going to have people that are going to scrutinize it based on, oh, well, I can't find what this individual is doing in some book that I read, because most people are stuck in the mentality that if I can't identify it somewhere, then it must not be legitimate. So at some point in time, all these magical concepts and the elders that came before us, when they introduced them, at what point did they become legitimized? They became legitimized because they stood the test of time, and individuals used them as an example. This is where I think we get confused, because what tends to start happening is, regardless of what system you're in, we subconsciously create rules and regulations and boundaries, and then we'll say, well, I don't deal with religion, faith, and belief systems. So being a black magician, or a magician, practicing, if you want to call some aspects of it witchcraft, and as we know, they'll have on the surface what they term mainstream white and black magic. Now, white magic, or some people call it Wiccan magic, is more of an earth-based nature religion. It kind of deals heavily with the solstices. So does black magic, but it deals heavily with the solstices, nature. It ties more into those magical worship workings. It deals with a lot of nature-based deities, gods, and goddesses. Now, true spiritual black magic incorporates some of that on the surface, but spiritual black magic is, as I've said before, manipulation of the subconscious mind. That's real magic. And that's where one has to get to the point to start on that road to the path of self-mastery. Like I said before, you can study all the history in the world. You could give yourself any title you want. You can call yourself conscious. You can call yourself an Egyptologist. You can call yourself a scientist. You can call yourself anything that you want. But if you're not able to apply the information that you're studying, then you're basically just a walking bank of information. And I've said before a million times, we got people over intellectualizing multifacets of historical information and getting into debates about this nonsense on a regular basis. And in this day and time, it's irrelevant, because as we see the planet changing, as I've said before, we see people's behavior changing. We see a lot of crazy shit going on in the world, but nobody's addressing how are we able to adjust and adapt to the things that's going on around us. Most people are taking a physical approach because they are reactionary bands and not proactive bands. As I said before, a true spiritual practitioner of black magic or spiritual magic, and let me stress this too and clarify or eliminate the spookism when I say black magician, because when I say black magician, if you've again got this Hollywood concept in your mind, or this mainstream concept in your mind of voodoo and Satanistic practices and human sacrifice and all that shit, then you obviously don't know what a real black magician is. And to all the so-called Egyptian conscious people, the core of a spiritual black magician goes back to ancient Egypt, and it was one of the great sciences that we practice, especially the mysteries of Anubu or Anubis. Okay, the synonymous of the color black with the Egyptian black jackal dog, as they say, of the dead, the connector of the physical and the spiritual realm. And Anubu was powerful in conjuring up spiritual spells to connect us to, for lack of a better word, the realm of the dead or the realm of our ancestors. You'll also find in many of the Egyptian texts, and actually inscribed upon the walls in ancient Egypt and many of the different papyri and papyruses, you will see that whether it was the embalming rites, the opening of the mouth ceremony, you will find that Anubu or Anubis played a key role in connecting the two realms. A black magician or a spiritual practitioner is able to activate the archetype forces and energies of Anubu or Anubis, because they're a real black magician, especially if you claim to be Kemetic or deal with the mysteries of ancient Egypt. You should definitely know how to tap into the archetype energy of Anubu and the many deities that associate with these practices, rather than just sit and give a drawn-out lecture about the history of ancient Egypt. And like I said before, I'm tired of listening to the redundant shit over and over about how great we were back in the day. You know, like I said before, people are stuck in the back in the day we were this and that. Well, it's 2016, and that back in the day shit is irrelevant, because it's not bringing anybody any type of real change. I'm not talking about creating the illusion psychologically that there's a change, because I could sit here, as I said before, and give you a 10-hour lecture on ancient Egypt and the history of it and the breakdown of creation and science, and you'll walk away from it feeling good. But when that feel good wears off, at the end of the day, what was the whole point and purpose of it if there was nothing practical that each individual can take from that information and apply it on a daily basis. So let's do this. What I want to do is let's give some basic principles on spiritual black magic. Now again, as I said before, to break that spookism, when you say, for an example, if you deal with spiritual alchemy, which is connected to magical practices, or we hear people use the word a lot, alchemy, or we hear people use the word as a term to describe what they call Egypt. They'll say chem. You'll hear that word Kemetic. You'll hear alchem, which, and I've told people before, really sometimes can be a mistake because it ties you back into biblical times, because the root has its origin in Aramaic and Arabic words, and it ties into the three sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, because the word Ham is Cham, and it just means black. So when you're saying Al-Kham, you got to be careful if you're using that term to identify with ancient Egypt, because even the word Egypt, as I've said before, is not the correct name for the place that we call Egypt. Because remember, as also stated, and history defines for all you people that are history buffs, we know that ancient Egypt got its culture from ancient Nubia. And as I've said before, there's more pyramids and what we term Egyptian culture you'll find in Aswan, what they call Sudan, or Nubia today. And that's where modern day Egypt got its culture from. And as I said, these ancient Nubians go back to the people that occupy the Nile region that were called Neolithics, and we call them the Pygmies or the Watusis. And this predates Egypt. This predates any Egyptian civilization at any time and period where we were known or identified with Egyptian culture before they were wearing namuzes and aprons and all the garb and regalia and culture that's associated with Egypt today. These are the individuals that we connect back with as ancient black magicians. Our ancient science goes back during those times. If somebody needs roughly a time frame to identify with the point in time of origin that we're going back to, because unfortunately some humans are weak-minded, they need a starting point. But basically you can't put no time frame on any of this because existence has always existed. When you trace the codes back of what people are fascinated with the last 10 to 15 years, melanin, they've been trying to figure out, and now I'm talking about neuromelanin, the existence of neuromelanin for years, and they can't do it because neuromelanin and the origin of it is in the brain, and it seeps out through the entire body, and neuromelanin coats every internal organ of your body, your kidneys, your liver, your heart, your lungs. It is responsible for the proper functioning of every internal aspect of your body, and the lack of it can cause a lot of mental, emotional, and physical problems. Scientists have spent billions of dollars trying to study this phenomenon of neuromelanin, and they can't put a time frame on it. Your neuromelanin, as I said before, are your spiritual conductors, which you are able to work your higher powers and your higher magic. You're able to send out energy and receive energy. This is key in understanding, if you really want to get down to the core and origin of our existence as true black magicians, one knows that spiritual science and is able to tap into it and work on it. So let's stop trying to put a time frame on something that has no time frame. We can trace it back to points in origin of history based on data that's there, but that is even limited. So this is why I say when people get caught up in nonsensical debates about what was first, who was here, it's just theory, because bottom line is nobody was fucking there in the beginning. That's here today. Anybody that's giving you an exact point in time and origin of the beginning is basing it on purely speculation. I don't give a fuck what they say. They can sit there and give you dates, and the funny thing that kind of stands out to me and makes me laugh about it is you'll see a lot of these so-called black conscious lecturers and teachers sitting there bashing Caucasians and the white man, but yet I'll sit there and listen